You're live.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, for being here at our finance meeting on June 10th. We first start out with the attendance taking. Please, Rachel, would you do that?
Yes. Good morning, Chair Balducci,
Here.
Vice Chair Santiago,
Present.
Regent Williams.
Here.
Noted. Regent Yang.
Here.
Noted. Welcome to our ex officio, Charlene Casameno, our administrative lead, CFO Blanchard, our college and university CFOs and staff, Presidents Bernal, Bulmer, and Toro. Welcome. Chair Balducci, you have a quorum.
Thank you for that. I would like to make a motion to adopt the agenda for today. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion made, seconded. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. I need a hammer. Thank you. Moving right along, we have to approve the Finance Committee meeting minutes. I would make a motion that we approve the previous Finance Committee meeting minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, thank you. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Information items. Okay, we have two contract notifications here, and what we're going to start with is a notification on the Charter Oak contract. And I'll call on Lloyd to discuss that with us or bring it forward. Lloyd?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Regents. In terms of our contract notice, we have two contracts that Charter Oak has executed based on the terms of your policy for BOR contracting and signature authority. It is our duty to simply report these contracts to the Board of Regents. The first is with Barnes & Noble. This provides an exclusive right for bookstore services to Charter Oak's credit-bearing students. This contract is an existing contract, so it's an amendment that adds $1 million to an existing $1 million contract that had a term, a 5-year term from July 2024 to the end of June 2029. The additional $1 million is for additional scope associated with the bookstore contract. They're going to be serving, in effect, more students and other things, I believe. If you have any questions on this point, CFO Moriarty is here to address whatever questions you may have. And finally, this contract was obtained, was sourced through a public bidding process. Secondly, the Learning Mate contract, also with Charter Oak, has a maximum value of $2 million. This is a 3-year contract, which has already started at the end of April and will extend through the end of June 2029. This is a contract to help Charter Oak address one of the board's important initiatives on AI. This contract will help Charter Oak understand what their AI capability is through a capability assessment. And this Learning Mate vendor will help them with discovery engagement together with Charter Oak and their strategic AI partner to help guide the design, implementation, and scalability of Charter Oak's efforts to support the AI initiative. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my two informational contracts. We are happy to answer whatever questions Regents may have.
Any questions by any members?
I have a question.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Just for CFO Moriarty, just wanted to circle back. I see the contract value, I think for the AI thing was $2 million. Can we just connect that back? Because I could have sworn we had talked about a $1 million spend, and I just want to make sure we're sticking to what we had originally discussed.
Sure, yep. I don't know the exact dates, but the approvals we obtained from the board were for a total of $2 million. But you're correct, there's only a $1 million spend in the upcoming fiscal year. And so we are breaking it up into two tranches, 1 million and another 1 million that would appear in the fiscal year 28 budget that we would be proposing.
And that was what we had originally discussed. My recollection was we had a project to go and assess opportunities that were then going to come back and sort of say, here's where AI could be used, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought that whole thing was $1 million.
I believe it was 2. If you'd allow me, I'll check the minutes
Sure.
and just make sure there's no disconnect there. But
Thanks. I
Yep.
appreciate that.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Any other comments? If not, we'll move to the action items. I would like to move to management confidential wage increase. Lloyd?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The management confidential wage increase is being proposed only for the system office at this point. The proposal is to, one, provide the FY26 retroactive payments at 4.5% for all employees, which is consistent with those employees who are represented by unions. Second, the FY27 increase will depend on the level of the classification. On salary is incorrect. For manager 2s and below, we are proposing a 4.5% increase, treating those employees, it's about 29 personnel, similarly to the represented employees. For those employees at the classification of manager 3 or above, again, these are only system office employees. We are proposing a 2.5% increase for employees at system office with the classification of manager 3 or above. That implicates 31 personnel within the system office. The graph on the right simply shows, the orange shows the manager 3s and above, and the blue bars show the manager 2s and below. Each bar represents an employee in the system office. So you'll see 60 employees. Am I doing my math right? Yep. 60 employees represented in this bar. The line represents the cutoff of salaries. Each one of these bars rise to their level of salary. And the line that you see in the graph represents the cutoff between manager 2s and manager 3s. And the reason I'm showing this is to make the case that with this particular approach to providing increases to system office management confidential employees, it does not create inequities through compression of salaries or inversion of salaries. You'll see just a little bit above the line for the lowest paid manager 3, there's plenty of room to accommodate increases. You'll see below that line, in the distance between that line and the highest paid blue bars, you'll see there's plenty of distance. So as the management 2s get a 4.5% raise, and as management 3s get a 2.5% raise, there's no compression, nor is there inversion based on our analysis. So, Mr. Chair, this is what we are proposing for the management confidential raises for these 60 system office employees. System office employees do not include shared services employees that reside at system office or that report to system office, because most of these employees, if not all, are members of the SWOF union and therefore are represented and are paid via the contract.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Ari, excuse me, Ari, you had a comment?
Well, we can get back to this, but are we not talking about the institutional level?
You may talk about the institutional level. I was
Okay.
not in the position.
We don't have a
to present the
slide.
data.
Got it. Okay, well, let's get to that. Let's get to that in a second. I think, is there any communication or conversation around, this proposal for system office?
I just have
You gotta, do you want to?
I'll take it. So just for people who may not be familiar, the manager 2 and below, I know at least it used to be on the campuses that these represented confidential executive assistants and people that really weren't in managerial positions. Is that the case at the system office?
At the system office, they're either represent. Thank you, Regent Casamento. At the system office, manager 2 employees, all employees that are not management confidential are represented. So the treatment of classification at the system office may be slightly different than the application of classification rules at the campuses.
So just as an example, executive confidential administrative assistants, when there were lots of years where managers across the system didn't get raises, work was put in place to make sure those employees still continued because their reason for being in the management confidential wage category wasn't that they were managers. It was rather that they happened to be performing confidential duties. So again, just flagging that. I mean, it looks like they're going to get a raise either way, but trying to make that distinction if it applies at the system office. It may only apply on the campuses.
So I think that's a fair point to make, Regent Casamento, and I believe that distinction was addressed through the board's policy on the practice, if not the policy, pardon me, the practice of treating all employees within the system similarly to the represented employees, so that these nuanced distinctions wouldn't lead to unfairness in the terms of wage increases. I understand.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Any other comments or questions for Lloyd?
Yep.
You got me?
Go ahead, Ted.
I'm sorry, Ted.
Yeah, hi. I apologize, my voice is going out, so if you can't hear me, let me know. I'll try harder. I just want to comment on this, that we were talking about a wage increase without the context of the budget. It seems like kind of in the reverse order. But when we get to the budget, we will understand the situation that we are all in, which is not a good one. And I want to be clear that while we are collaborating with our collectively bargained units, this is something that we have the control over as a board, and that we are actively looking to I think, do the right thing relative to the amount of spend that is occurring here in system office. The one comment that I made is that I'd seen earlier proposals where we had an additional tier for those people above the collectively bargained limit, I think of $218,000. Someone please correct me if I'm wrong. But this proposal does not have that. Can someone please discuss why?
Any comments on that?
Ted, I think we lost you at the very end. Could you just, was there a question at the end?
Yeah, my question is that I had seen earlier proposals where we had a third tier above people who made above $218,000, which is the collectively bargained limit, right? And I'm wondering why we have not seen that proposal. And let me just state that I believe that we need to lead from example here in system office, and that the most highly compensated individuals here bear the most responsibility for our system, and we have not been fulfilling that responsibility. And so I would look for the most senior leadership here to take a lower increase for the 2027 fiscal year to signal their intentions to properly manage our system. So I had seen an earlier proposal with that, and I'm wondering why that proposal is not in front of us.
You know, Ted, I think certainly within your rights to recommend that, though. I think, as we went through it, felt that the most reasonable approach, which does signal exactly what you're saying, which is, look, we are facing a significant budget deficit this year and future, and we need to take that seriously. I think this sends that message and is saying, look, people at the top levels of the institution need to take responsibility to get us to a better place, and need to be the first ones to share, in the tightening of the belts, as it were. So I think this accomplishes that goal in a fair and responsible way.
Yes, we are. And as you know, we're facing a deficit, as was just mentioned by Ari. So as we move forward, we'll try and consider all things, but definitely what we're looking at right now seems to be a proposal that can work.
Understood. Like I said, I would be looking for more, but I will certainly support this if this is what my colleagues desire, because I think that the signaling above manager 3 is reasonable. Like I said, I would have I'd like to see more.
Alexa, stop timer.
That was me.
Thanks, Ted. I think we're okay. So I think at this point, Chairman Balducci, are we able to sort of vote on this and make this the recommendation of the?
Yes, I think we should make a move forward and look at if there's an issue later on, but I think that's something we could do right now, and everybody's be content with the 4.5, et cetera. So I would make that in the form of a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion by members? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Motion's carried. Moving right along,
Well, before we move on, it didn't make the meeting, Chair Balducci, but there have been conversations around management confidential wage increases at the institutional level. And since we've just been through it at the system office level, I'd suggest that if it's okay with you, I'll detail what we've been discussing. And then we can have a discussion and or vote on if that's okay with you.
that's fine. Why don't you go ahead with that?
So the proposal for institutional management confidential wage increases would be very similar to the proposal laid out in this slide, with one modification, which would be that, well, maybe two modifications, but let's go with the first one, that in the manager 3 and above classification that we have listed here, that would be a 3.0% increase, not the 2.5. And I think that it's not yet clear, or we haven't been able, the classifications aren't exactly aligned between system office and all the institutions, or even between institutions. And so I think what I would propose is that we request that human resources at system office work with their counterparts across the institutions to put together an appropriate line that makes sense for the full board meeting next week. So just to reiterate, effectively a similar concept of a two-tier solution for the 25 increase, with the lower tier getting the 4.5 and the top tier getting the 3.0. And we ask human resources to make that line, help us define that line at the right level for next meeting.
We also ought to, if you're going to do that, we also ought to know what kind of numbers we're talking about. I mean, that makes
True.
a big difference. So if we could also get the dollar amounts and the difference of changes proposed, it would be very helpful, of course, to the members.
And you got Regent Yang has his hand up.
Yeah, let me just say that on that note, I think that it would be nice if we had more analysis of this. I do understand, as always, we are always under the gun for this meeting, which is we're constantly surprised by that, which is just shocking to me. I'm being sarcastic, but the reality of this is that we should have further compensation analysis, and I do believe this is something that our new interim chancellor certainly supports as well. That I support as well. Not something that we need to action today, but the steps that you just articulated, Vice Chair Santiago, I agree with, and we should be doing that throughout, not just for this particular impact of this particular change.
Thank you, Ted. Yes, Don?
Yeah, I also understand why we need to move forward, and I share some of Ted's concerns. However, it was stated at our last board meeting that we're looking at $150 million deficit, and we don't know necessarily that there's going to be a cavalry riding to the rescue on that, and budget cuts may be in order. So if we miss the opportunity for some savings, while the savings may seem insignificant in light of a $150 million deficit, every penny does count. And if it's that versus reduction in force, for example, which everyone doesn't want to have happen, it becomes more likely that that's the go-to in the future, as opposed to finding savings here and there to help make up the difference. So I just want to put that on the record.
And you're correct. It may be $150 million deficit and the changes or savings are small, but those small changes or reductions add up and make that $150 million less each time we make a move in that direction. So thank you for that, Don.
I would say that, apropos for what both Regent Williams and Regent Yang said, I think, if we can agree to adopt the management confidential wage increase we just discussed for the institutions, I think aligned with that, I think we also ought to direct human resources at the system office in conjunction with their counterparts at the institutions to put together a detailed wage analysis across the system, as well as an action plan that we would be able to put into play for the FY '28 budget and beyond. And I think would be wise to put a deadline on that work as well. Maybe, pending anyone's feeling, maybe we'll look at saying, hey, we got to have this analysis in an action plan together by the end of the first quarter of 2027, which I think gives us, it's a big ask, but I think that gives us not only plenty of time to get the job done, but that would also be, several months before the FY28 budget approval, so we can thoughtfully consider that. So I would ask you, Chair Balducci, to comment on that, and my fellow regents, Williams and Yang, to see if that's something they could support as well.
Actually sounds like a good idea. We're not rushed. You have time to look at all the different sides, all the different portions that are affected. And if we do it that way, it would make sense as we go forward. So I would support that idea. Thank you.
Can we
And
ask our other?
ask,
Uh,
anybody else comment,
yeah.
on it, please?
Ted, Don, are you guys supportive of that concept? Go ahead, Ted, I see you're off mute.
Yeah, I do support that. I do think that further analysis is called for. I obviously think that a lot of this does lie within each of our member institutions, so does not need to be led by system office, but certainly coordinated by system office, which is the proper function here. And certainly looking at not just compensation, but all of the incentives that we have provided for all of our employees. And again, we should probably coordinate this as well with Regent Jappin and the HR committee. Again, we have enough time to do this right.
Thank you. Ted.
And I would agree.
Other comments? Donnie? Don?
Thank you, Rich. I agree.
Like that simple. Yes.
I just wanted to offer, I'm going to say 5 or 6 years ago, there was a holistic study of all of Management Confidential, and people, it might have been 7 or 8, but they kind of changed everything to add a level of consistency and leveling, and they did a salary analysis. So it's ripe for a re-look, but whoever's performing that work should go find at least that baseline study and information that was done.
Thank you. That's well said. Thank you.
May I ask a question of Regent
Yes.
Casamento? Was that a study focused on the entire state or just for our system in higher ed? Great, thank you.
So if, I think with that, I would ask that we adopt the management confidential wage increase, actions for the institutions. And well, let's do one at a time. Let's do that, and then we can talk about the directive to do the research. So if we're good, I'd move that we approve the management confidential wage increase proposal for the institutions, which is FY26 retroactive 4.5. And then for 27, it'll be a 4.5 and a 3.0 split. We just need to get from the institutions led by HR what that line is, but let's get that move. I move to approve that, and we'll finalize it at the board meeting.
I'll second
Second.
that motion. Further discussion? Ed, did you want to
No.
comment?
I was just seconding.
Okay, you, Ted, fine. Ted seconded it. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
I would also just say, Chair Balducci, then that I would also put forward a motion that we both request from Human Resources as well as send to the Human Resources Committee our desire to have a compensation analysis that's done in coordination and cooperation with HR leads at all of our institutions, and using any historical information we can find to put together a detailed compensation analysis and action recommendations to be completed and delivered by the end of Q1 so that we can incorporate into the FY27 budget any action. So that would be my motion, and look for a second.
There a second?
Second.
Second that motion. Discussion? Motion made, seconded, no further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Moving right along to the action items we have before us. I'll turn that over now for those items to Lloyd. You want to go through those one at a time?
Be happy to, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. The first contract for your approval is the Mutual Link, is the contract between CT State and Mutual Link Incorporated. This is a $3 million maximum value contract that runs from July 1 of the current year, 2026, to the end of the year, 2028. This represents a 2.5 year contract to provide communication linkages for emergency purposes between each CT State campus and the local police department around that campus. This is all part of the effort started by the state a few years ago. The state previously funded this particular initiative. Now we are sort of picking up the costs after the state has moved on. We are identifying the similar vendor that the state identified. So this is the contract we propose for CT State. In terms of sourcing, because the state identified this particular contractor for these purposes, we were able to, and then moved on, we were able to obtain this contractor through a contract already in place that was publicly sourced. I don't know if you know this, Mr. Chair, but institutions within the state have the right to source vendors from public contracts from other states that were obtained through public sources, addressing the accountability issue of a public procurement. And we're able to use that master agreement. This particular master agreement is Washington State's master agreement. It's called a Value Point Master Agreement. We were able to obtain this particular contractor from that agreement so that we can check the box on procurement rules, as well as maintain the same contractor that had been delivering this particular service when the state was supporting it.
Thank you. Any comments then?
CFO Blanchard, has other institutions been impacted by the state pulling back funding on this, or this has really only impacted us?
I am not sure what the universities are doing in terms of their local communications. My guess is their police departments have, the universities in particular, have articulation agreements with their local police in their communities, their respective communities. So they are likely doing this already. I see head nods from the universities present. So this is something to continue what CT State had been doing without state support.
And that mutual link you said is $3 million?
That's the maximum value of the contract, sir, yes.
Any other comments?
Carrie,
I
would
just
you
want
like
to point
to?
out that, again, this is $3 million that is now in our budget, and that is now contributing to our deficit that previously was not there, right? So this is where every little bit counts. But I know on this one, we're not going to mess with the safety. We should not mess with the safety of our students.
Can I address this?
Yeah.
The point here is these are important services to have in place at every one of our universities and colleges where we have physical locations, because we are in charge of students that are often between 18 and 21 years old, and we need to have seamless emergency services, some of which we can provide on our own, some of which the local police departments provide. And we have to have articulation agreements with every one of our local police departments near our campuses so that they may help us provide that protection.
Yes, to be clear, that's exactly what I stated in the second half of my commentary, that I do not look to in any way add to risk for our students, and quite the opposite. I'm just pointing out that this is $3 million that we have to shoulder for this.
Okay, thank you, Regent Yang. So the second contract for, did you want to approve the first?
I want to vote.
Or vote on it?
Individually, one at a time. So voting on the mutual link contract. Motion made. I'm assuming you're making the motion. I'll make the motion. Is there a second to adopt that contract?
Second.
Second motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Motion's carried. Moving right along to the Aetna.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The second contract is between System Office on behalf of the universities and Aetna Life Insurance Company. This contract is to provide accident insurance for the university students. The community college and Charter Oak already use state insurance for this purpose. And the universities want to move toward that at some point after we finish this particular policy. However, our extended relationship with Aetna runs from back in 2021 through the end of June 2028. Each year, Aetna raises their rates based on claims and other factors that insurance companies tend to consider. This is amendment to that existing contract to increase these rates for accident insurance by 22%. That is, they're increasing the contract or the fees for this accident insurance from $68 to $83 per student. And Regents, if you approve this contract, it does increase the fees pretty much automatically for this particular purpose.
And I understand, but I just, what kind of claims do we have that they can raise that it seems like they're raising at 22%? Is it significant enough to do that with a student? I have not seen the numbers from the student claims.
Well, I've not seen the numbers on the student claims, but I'm told that the claims are sufficient enough to warrant the increase in rates. Just to be clear, this accident insurance covers all manner of accidents, whether those students are on our campus or not on our campus, or even if they are traveling. So if, as long as they're a student, this premium will pay their accident policy, in effect.
Can someone elaborate on the last sentence? Universities want to move to state insurance after current policy?
So this is a contract that had been in place since 2021. The contract extends through 2028. So we are contracted with Aetna Services for another year or so, Aetna Insurance Company for another year or so. Let me see, that's actually 2 years, to work with them for this particular type of policy. Because insurance rates tend to increase working with private providers, I think the university CFOs feel like they'd like to go the route of the community colleges and Charter Oak, but after we meet the terms of our contract, our contractual relation.
I'm not, maybe we need to just take a big step back. What is so we provide accident insurance to every enrolled student? Is that what I'm?
We purchase accident insurance for every one of our enrolled students, and then we charge them the fee for that premium.
So this is, so just from a cost impact to budget, since we're talking about that today, this doesn't impact our budget because it's a straight pass through to the students. Is that correct?
It is a pass through to the students, although yes, it is a pass through to the students in completion, completely. The student's insurance is applied first, right? So every student that comes to one of our campuses, they have to have liability insurance. So every student has to have some form of insurance for these purposes. To the extent that their claim is not covered by their own insurance, this particular policy covers the remainder parts of the claim or the remainder costs associated with the claims.
Got it. And then the other concept would be switching to state covered.
So the state apparently has an accident policy for our students that I know UConn has used in the past. I don't know where they are now, but apparently Charter Oak and Community College at CT State use the state's policy. This is probably something the universities have done for some time, clearly going back to 2021. But when the opportunity arises, I think they want to make a similar change as well.
Any other comments by any members? If not, then I'll try your minds. All those in favor of the we do need a motion. I thought I made it. I did not. Thank you for being so cautious and watching me. I would make a motion that we adopt the Aetna Life Insurance policy program. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all, yes.
Sorry, someone's speaking in the room, we can't hear you.
No, hold on. Yes, we're gonna unmute. President Ballmer has a comment. Can you just start over again, please?
I'm unclear on when the student fee would be adjusted.
I'll be honest, President Ballmer, I am too. Typically, before we passed the policy that had the board approve these, that would have the board approve these, we just adjusted the fees automatically at the beginning of the academic year. So it is my belief that this would apply beginning in the fall, although I see my CFO from Central correcting me. These are already built into our budgets. So they would apply fall of 2026.
The increases were already built into the fee structure? Oh, I'm sorry. Could you use the mic so people online
Can someone
can hear?
put her on a mic, please? Thank you.
Yep, we're doing that right now.
sorry about that. So these are already built in. This is the last part of the tuition and fee structure that we get. So there's one price for the fall and one price for the spring that are built into the tuition and fee schedule.
So you're saying it would apply spring of 27,
No.
the
it's
increase?
Fall.
The
There'll be a
increase?
fall amount, and then the spring amount is a little different than the fall amount.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Yes.
I wanted to provide clarification. So if,
Can you use,
She's got it.
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. We charge a general university fee, and so this comes out of that fee. So the increase applied in fall means that the university will have to absorb the increase. And this is one of the cases that we've kind of had discussions about differentiating specific fees so that if there is an increase in an auxiliary service, that we just charge it back. So it is a part of the general fee, which we wouldn't be able to increase that for the fall. So the difference will come out of the university.
Okay. Is that not,
That's the case for us because it is a part, we don't charge a separate fee. So the general fee has already been determined and it was not increased according to our fee policy to be able to absorb that increase.
so I just want to just to echo it back so we're all hearing the same thing. So at Southern, this comes out of a general university fee. That general fee is used to cover a number of things, this included. At Central, is it done differently? Is that what I'm understanding?
No, it's done the same, but we adjust that general fee as soon as we get these numbers from the system office. So that fee is adjusted.
And the fee would be adjusted at the same time or ahead of the
Bills.
the increase, therefore the adjustment compensates, so it ends up being net zero to the institutional budget, but it would be an increased fee to the student.
Correct.
Is that, going back to Southern, is that different from how you would expect it to be done? Okay, Western? Do you know, President?
I
Burnham?
mean, I'm looking at our fee structure. So we would, like Central, increase our general student fee. The piece that goes back to the timeliness is school starts really soon. So as we advertise our fees to students, this is a change from what they will be seeing when they've already registered and committed.
So just to be, and I'm trying to look at this thing more clearly, it looks to me like it's being extended from ending July 31st, 27 to July 31st, 28. So does the increased fee only apply to that extra year? In which case, if that's the case, then we haven't even gotten there yet because this wouldn't apply to this. This would go into effect fall of 27. So you have a year to add the fee. Does that, I think it's important from the finance committee to understand is, does this have an impact, a negative impact on the budget for FY '27?
Mr. Chairman, if I may. AY 26-27 means it's fall 26 because the academic year, AY, begins in 2026. And so the increase would have to be applied for the fall of the current year, fall 26. I think there is some confusion as to how it is applied at the universities. Part of the confusion I have is typically when we sign contracts, or before we had this policy, if we signed a contract that automatically adjusted fees that we passed on to the students, we would just pass them on to the students. Typically, when we pass fees, we do so later in the fall. In our calendar for the coming academic year, that will be in October. We will present tuition and fee increase proposals to this committee in October for the following academic year, which would be for fall 27. But when we have contracts that we ink that automatically adjust fees, now we're in a position where we either have to absorb those fees in our budget or pass those fees forward. And we're reluctant to pass those fees forward without board approval because of your jurisdiction over tuition and fees. So with this proposal, you would in effect be voting also to raise the fees and pass them on. Otherwise, you can approve the contract and we would absorb those fees until we had a more explicit vote on the fee itself.
Okay, Well, I think Regent Casamento wants to say something, but I'm also trying to also understand, Lloyd, when I look at the actual, I see what the PowerPoint says. When I look at the actual resolution, it seems that it's adding a year from July of 27 to July of 28. So I'm just trying to understand if that's a differential between what's listed
I
here.
don't believe it's adding a year. Oftentimes, with certain vendors, we sign contracts that have the right for them to increase fees year by year within the term of the contract. So the term of the original contract runs through June of 2028. This is just an increase for the upcoming year. This is very much like the food service contracts, right? They have a multi-year contract, but each year they have provisions to raise the value of that contract based on whatever provisions, number of students, other conditions, inflation, et cetera. So this is one of those contracts where we have a multi-year term and we're raising the conditions each year based on the claims and other considerations that insurance companies consider.
And all those claims need to be supported, of course, as to the increases. It isn't just an arbitrary thing that they come up with, correct?
That's what they would tell us, yes, sir.
Oh, you've got Regent Casamento and then Regent Yang.
Charlene?
You may want to go back, and again, prior to 2021, I'm recalling that we identified a set of fees on the Tier 2 fee schedule as being a pass-through. And what that means is if there was a cost that increased when the regents approved it, that it was automatically then passed on to the student because of, we used to approve tuition and fees in the spring, but at some point it moved to the fall, and that provided some wiggle room. I don't know whether or not what has happened specific to that, so it may be worth looking at before the board meeting how the Tier 2 fee schedule was passed, because if it were passed using the same logic as in previous years, then it would be a true statement that the fee would be increased to the student, but that disclosure was typically on the fee schedule. So students knew to expect that this was like a data element that we didn't know when we passed it, but when we did know, we were going to update the fee schedule. So the board knew and the students knew. So I would recommend someone double check if that practice is in place, because that might resolve some of the questions that we're talking about.
That's a good point. Thank you for that. Lloyd?
I believe President Toro has a comment.
Yes, I have a comment, and it's as a follow-up of Regent Casamento comment. We do have that clearly stated in our fee structure. The document that the students are looking at include the increase in the cost of that insurance. Why we did it? Other institutions have not done it. Well, we can start an investigation on that. But I will say, it's a standard operating procedure for sure. Maybe we need to review the standard operating.
I would agree with that point.
Thank you. That sounds good. Like a good idea. Further comments?
Ted, do you have anything you wanted to add? Your hand was up before.
Nope, the last two comments covered it.
So at this point, I'm not sure where we're going with this resolution, Chairman.
So my point in raising the fee issue is to be clear to the regents about if you approve this contract, there will have to be an attendant fee increase to students as well. And so what you are approving here is the contract itself with an understanding of the implication.
Well, before President Ballmer wants to talk, but before we do that, just, it seems like we have to approve it, or we got to have these people covered. So I think that's really sort of on the face of it, where we are. What seems like the next component is trying to make sure that these student fees get properly passed through to where they belong. And so I'll hand it over to you, President Ballmer, and Cindy, while you're talking, is there some support that would be needed to get this passed along at institutions that haven't had the practice of doing it?
I just wanted to set us up for success next year. April or May, when we were notified first about this, was too late because students register, and we really like to try to get on the front end of this prior to next year. So if we can think about the date we get our new rates from Aetna, and time it with when students register, I think it's a little bit difficult after they've already paid their bills to go back to them and ask them to pay more. So
We
that's
want to make sure also that students are aware of the changes that are coming along. It isn't all of a sudden a surprise, oh, and by the way, we have several fees that we're going to tack on that you're going to be responsible for. I think that's part of what you folks are headed toward and we're looking to get as a response.
If I may, Mr. Chairman?
Lloyd?
I think President Bulmer makes a very good point. Sometimes we have these contracts that are executed at the wrong time, especially contracts that have these additional implications on student fees. Her point about finding a way to move these contracts earlier in time so that the institutions have a handle on this before they announce the fee structure for the coming academic year. I think it's a very good point to make.
Any other comments? Not?
I think we're pending a vote right now. I think I think we can approve it, and I think we should also ask that institutions work to figure out how to get this fee schedule changed. And we can certainly ask system office to try and work with Aetna to move the contract timing around if that's possible.
Yes, it is.
So I think we have a vote pending. You can,
Yes, we
you can
do.
get
I
there.
think we have a motion made and seconded.
Yeah.
I have further discussion. If not, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you. Motion's carried.
Just what,
Can I
no,
say-
do we,
Can I make
Go
one
ahead,
more
Ted.
comment? I don't want to make a motion, but I think this is yet another piece of investigation that we need to do in system office to understand the impact of a lot of these agreements and decisions that we make and how they impact students and how they impact the universities, NCT State and Charter Oak. Frankly, Charlene was referencing some knowledge that maybe existed 6 or 7 years ago, which apparently we don't have. These kinds of fumbles are unacceptable. We need to be on the ball on this stuff and not trying to reinvent this on the fly as the board. So I'm stopping short of making a motion to this, but we need to do something about this. And so I would charge the system office personnel to perform this analysis before the next board meeting.
Don?
And we don't do this uniformly, as was stated earlier. Some institutions add that policy on to the state's coverage. We ought to do an analysis from a cost benefit point of view of adding additional folks to the state policy versus the rate increases, the one now and perhaps in the future from Aetna.
Point. Thank you. Where are we here? That was discussion. Tuition and fees. Next item on the agenda for action is tuition and fee refund policy. Lloyd?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item for your approval is a proposed policy for tuition and fee refunds. At every institution in the United States, there is a policy that determines when a student registers for a course and decides to withdraw from that course, when are they able to get refunds? If they withdraw in 1 week, what refund do they get? If they withdraw 3 weeks later, what refund do they get? This policy clarifies those refunds based on the timing of their withdrawals. And so you'll see that we have the policy addresses the refund policy for the universities and for Charter Oak. I believe CT State Community College has its own policy that we've not yet weaved into this one. And so that may be something we do in the future. But for the universities, the top panel on your screen, you'll see that if withdrawn within the first day, the tuition and the housing fee and presumably the food service fee will be rebated on a 100% basis. Thereafter, it's based on the week. So within the first week, say on the 3rd or 5th day, the tuition policy will be rebated 100%, but the housing fee will be refunded only at 90%. Within, actually, it's 90% for the tuition, if it's within 2 to 7 days. So that's the first week. I added 2 lines unnecessarily. Within the second week for the universities, if a student withdraws from a class, that student will receive a 60% refund on tuition and a 60% refund on the housing and fees. You'll see that the refund for that tuition and housing and fees are very similar based on when the student withdraws, but the food service fee is refunded on a prorated basis. Because food services are provided on a daily basis, it's going to be more finely tuned. The refund will be more finely tuned to the services they had already provided. As it relates to Charter Oak, if a student at Charter Oak withdraws on the first day.
If I could interrupt, this is just a change of 2 words to this policy. This is the existing structure. The only change here from a policy perspective is that it allows the presidents to designate the authority to waive the fees in extraordinary circumstances. So the only change is "or designee" in the waiver section.
Thank you. That's helpful. That's very helpful. So the policy itself is in your materials.
I think if literally that's the only change, then I would just ask the presidents who are here from the impacted institutions if they have any concerns with this change. 1 second. And then, and separate from even concerns, do you support this change? Okay. Michael.
Thank you. I just wanted to add some color and thank you, Chief Compliance Officer Cameron Liston. I just wanted to make a note because there is a policy committee that sits together and we spoke about this. The reason for this amendment to the policy was that our campuses are filled with several departments which handle student counseling. So whether it's academics, mental wellness, and financial counseling. And so we were seeking this change for a president to be able to designate a person who could essentially refund these fees, because most often this sits with the bursar's office, which works in conjunction with the registrar to kind of go through what tends to be very sensitive situations our students may encounter, such as medical issues, domestic violence, things like this. So this provides a designation that the folks closest to those facts and circumstances could work directly with the students.
Thank you for that. Other comments?
There's a hand up. Ted?
Yeah. So I'm certainly in favor of making this decision at the president level because they understand their campuses and the needs of their students the best. I just wonder, are we approving any kind of mechanism here where we have some accountability, where we understand the number of waivers that are granted and these kinds of things? Do we have any historical data on this?
Ted, you're a little broken up coming through, but I think broadly what we heard is you support the policy, given the president's flexibility to run their institutions, but you're curious if we have any trending data on, I think you said the word waivers. I don't know. That's what I think I heard you say.
Well,
is that correct?
Yeah, okay, waivers is the wrong word, but this, when these, whatever we're calling the power that we're granting the presidents to do that we previously held to ourselves, do we have any information on how often we have used this ability to change this? Again, I don't know what the wording is.
Ted, just to back up, and I'll take out on a limb here, but I think what you're seeing over here is nothing new. This tuition refund policy has been, I'll say longstanding, although I'll just say standing since I don't know how long, but it's been a standing policy. And what it's effectively saying is if you withdraw from a course on the first day, for example, you get all of your tuition refunded back to you. After the 4th week, you get 0, and there's a sliding scale in between. Charter Oak has something slightly different. That would not change. And I think what this is merely saying is rather than the presidents having to sign off on every single waiver, which I'm sensing is an administrative burden, they are allowed to delegate this to the people who are actually already managing it, which is the bursars and the registrar's office in conjunction with each other. So is no practical implication on the number of refunds, how many refunds that we're already doing or would already be doing. So no impact there. If what you're wondering is on a separate thing, how many people are signing up and then withdrawing after they start? We can ask that question. I just want to be clear that I don't think that would be changing or is contemplated to change in the approval of this policy. This is just kind of an administrative item, and I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads, so I think that I'm right on that. I don't know if that helps you, Ted, but.
Yeah, that's fine. I do want to see that data is the question. If that's a separate ask, then we can do it after this. But it's related to this because it's hard for me to make a decision on this without understanding how often this happens. And of course, this does have big financial impact for the system.
So listen, I'm gonna go to Lily in a second. Ted, I just want to be clear. They're already, whatever they're doing, they're already
Oh, I
doing.
know. I understand.
Okay,
I
all right.
understand, Ari.
Okay,
My
got it,
point
got
here
it.
is, I understand. I understand that what we're approving does not affect that. My point is, because this is crossing our attention, I want to drill into it because otherwise we don't have an opportunity to know what we need to drill into or not, is my point.
Fair.
And I
Fair.
apologize if people don't want to do this, but I think it is an opportune time for us to ask some very basic questions of how much this impacts us. And if you don't have that data today, that's fine. You can send it to me later.
Totally. No, very fair question. I think Lillian wants to talk and also Jesse, so we'll go one at a time.
I was just going to share with Ted and the board that this policy specifies the special circumstances when the president can waive or refund. It happens very rarely. It is a very prescriptive, definitive, based on days and weeks of schedule. So this really only refers to special circumstances that are covered outside of that. They happen rarely. It could be mental health situations with a student. So it's not something that is really predictable, but it doesn't happen often. So this policy just helped say that a president can designate a person on their behalf on campus to do this, but it's not something that happens very frequently. It is a very prescriptive policy.
And are you talking about flexibility by the presidents to make some of those decisions depending on what the situation is, rather than everything is carte blanche and all of a sudden somebody has an appendicitis, for instance,
Correct. So if
and you have the discretion?
Correct.
That makes a great deal of sense to me. It certainly does.
So if it's after the fourth week when no refund would be due, it allows a president to say this is a very extenuating circumstance, a death in the family, mental health, those kinds of scenarios. So it is an exceptional, it's for exceptional circumstances.
It's that kind of thing. It gives you some wiggle room that makes sense. So it certainly does make sense to us and to me.
So
Thank you.
then Chair Balducci, I think that really emphasizes the point that Ted was making. So I think maybe we could just move on to Jesse, we'll come to you in a second.
It was just to help with context. So in my year, I've approved one of these, and it was for a student who had terminal cancer and applied late and was not going to be able to come back to campus. So it's very, very rare.
So I think we can just maybe ask for the next Finance Committee meeting, if we could just get a report over the last 2 years, how frequently this has been used by each institution. Is that an easy thing to get?
That makes sense.
Ed, would that suffice for you if we get a 2-year look back? Okay, well, thank you. We'll ask for you guys to prepare that for the next Finance Committee meeting, and I don't believe we have one for a little while, so you get some extra time.
Any other comments?
I just had a procedural one. I really appreciated Cameron calling out that the change here was modest, and it was great debate that we've had about the modest change. But there used to be a little bit of a staff report that kind of would have keyed that. So that was my question, which is, what's different about this? Am I going to line this up with the existing policy being familiar? So I would recommend that in the future, if it was possible to have, it used to be a single piece of paper that was called a staff report that allowed a regent or a staff member or anyone on campus to appreciate what was the nature of the change.
Good.
I just wanted to throw that out there.
May, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Lloyd?
Regent Casamento, I think that's a great idea. I can say that we do staff reports for the budget and other things that emanate from finance. We can do a better job at coordinating with our other colleagues, like the compliance office, to also do that when they propose changes that require approval. Thank you.
Just
Thank
if I may
you,
note as
Charlene.
well, it's highlighted in the board resolution as to the minor change. And since this was 2 words, it's tracked in the policy itself. So you'll see that it's in blue language on there. So you can kind of highlight that if you would like.
Other comments? If not, we'll Do we have to vote that? Tuition and fees?
Yes, you have to vote for the
So-
change, yes.
Yes, for that minor change, so I'd make a motion to do that. With that change, is there a
Second.
second? Motion made and
Second.
seconded, further discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to the partnership agreements that we have below. There are two of them. I would call on Lloyd to briefly tell us about each one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have two partnership agreements that Eastern is proposing. One is with Hartford Healthcare, and the other is with Northeast Connecticut Chamber of Commerce. I will highlight that the board has approved numerous of these agreements. However, the board has approved those at 5%. Eastern is proposing for each of these agreements a 10% tuition discount, along with other provisions that have been consistent with the other partnership agreements that you've approved. I will ask CFO Campbell to address this or to respond to your questions if regents have questions.
I have one. Why are we going to 10% when we've been at 5? And if the answer is we'll get more students, why don't we go to 25%?
Right. Or go free. We'll have tons of students.
You know, I'm just not sure, I'm not so sure I can be convinced that 10% is a better way to go than 15 is better than 10, I would think. So I would like to hear some of the discussion as to why you want to go to 10% as opposed to 5%.
Let me say, Mr. Chairman, before I ask CFO Campbell to speak, if he will speak on behalf of Eastern. I don't know if President Ismaili is present, but
Out of state.
okay. This is a pilot program, and so this is to help us understand what these partnership agreements can do for our institutions. So if you know, we're not at the point where we've collected the data so that we can evaluate that data, but this is what we had intended when we called this a pilot program. CFO Kim?
Thank you, CFO Blanchard. That's correct. This is a pilot program. Hartford Hospital came to us with the 10%. We actually, this parallels nicely with the School of Nursing just opening up at Eastern. We also have our simulation lab right down the street at Hartford Hospital. So this is kind of trying to build on that momentum and that partnership. Because this is a new program at Eastern, this is a great opportunity for us to get into the hospital system, to let people know that we now have these programs. We've already seen a lot of interest with our students there, speaking to current nurses, current doctors, administrators. So this is a great opportunity to market. And again, this parallels with what Hartford Hospital requested. That being said, if you look at our overall discount rate, meaning what we're discounting tuition for a typical student outside of the partnership programs, it's greater than 10%. So on these students, understood, it's a 10% discount. Why not 15? Why not 5? Well, we'll have to see how it plays out. But that being said, on a net basis, on a per credit basis, we are generating more net revenue than we would on a traditional student receiving financial aid. So this would be also first dollar out, meaning if the student qualified for a different financial aid package, they wouldn't get this 10% on top of that.
They
So-
would or wouldn't?
Would not.
Okay.
So it's important to note, and I agree, we need to look at the data. That being said, we can anecdotally say there's excitement at Hartford Hospital. It's right down the street. This is a new program, and this is also very good for the Wyndham community. The demographics there, the socioeconomic demographics, there are people that really need help. So this is a way to get into the hospital where we're looking for some of the lower salary employees of the hospital, trying to give them this benefit to move up. And that was part of the reason. And if you look, the chief academic officer of Hartford Hospital signed this contract. So there's a lot of excitement behind it. And it is, to CFO Blanchard's point.
That is a pilot.
It's a pilot, that's correct. And of course, we'll bring back the data. It will take, I don't foresee a mass number of students coming this fall. But again, we're trying to build that relationship.
Thank you. Ted?
Yeah, so listen, I'm not in favor of this. I do agree that we do need to do partnerships, and I certainly agree in discounting to a degree that that is part of our marketing spend to get, as you pointed out, CFO, net revenue generation as well as first dollar generation. Those are good things. However, when we decided that we wanted to review these partnership agreements, it wasn't so that we would arbitrarily approve them. My intent, when we made that discussion, we had that discussion, I believe everyone's intent on this committee and on the general board is that we should create and evaluate principles or standards or whatever you want to call them for us to approve these things. And as of which we have de facto had a 5% standard. And so I do not want to create any incentives, positive or negative, for everyone to have pilots or otherwise that would change that number unless we've thought much more carefully about this. And so I'm sorry that this will impact negatively, but I do think that we have not followed the process that we need to follow to be diligent about this. And I do not want to create any further consternation amongst our member institutions, competition amongst our member institutions. That should be the role of what we as a board and system office do to make sure that we are collaborating together. And I'm afraid that if we approve this without further analysis that is necessary, certainly in my mind, that then we will create incentives to have further pilots of 10%, 15%, 20%, 25%, 50%, and freaking free. I cannot support that. So we need to do the work. And I'm sorry that it's going to be, my vote is no on this particular point. And I'm sorry that it's happening to this particular agreement with Eastern. I do agree that this need is great. I do agree that we should have more of these partnerships, but we have to do our work. And we have not.
Ari,
Ted, hang on one second. Yeah. We also point well made that we need to have coordination. I think that the challenge is that, we're the body that really needed to sort of move that ball forward. And we haven't done that. We haven't created those parameters. So I think the challenge we're running into is we've given guidance that people could go out and try and put together some pilots. And I think we've got sort of a bit of a rock and a hard place situation in that I believe that both Hartford Healthcare and I think the Chamber of Commerce as well, that these agreements have already been negotiated. And I believe those entities believe that those things are starting. So I realize that we don't want to have that push us into a bad place, but we are in a little bit of in a pickle or in a conundrum, in that regard. And I'll let, Eastern comment back, but, I think we want to be a little bit careful in how we manage this, Ted. So I think we should merits further discussion on what we want to do with this and what parameters we want to set going forward. So hey, Don, I see your hands up. If you could just let Eastern CFO talk and then we'll come back to you if that's okay. All right, thanks.
Thank you. That's correct. The contracts have been signed. So they are executed contracts. That being said, of course, we can go back. Probably wouldn't be the best look, but that's where we're at right now.
thank you. Ted?
Don, hold on, let Don, and then I have a question before we go to the presidents. Don, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Ted's concerns, but I will support moving this forward as a pilot for some of the reasons that have already been said. This has been our policy to the extent that you want to call it a policy, that we allow these agreements to be negotiated at the campus level. I think Ted raises some good points that we ought to do an analysis of this. I think this is the wrong place to just say, let's undo this particular set of incentives for this institution. And again, particularly because this is just a pilot. As a sidebar to that, I'd say that we ought to also take a look at how this affects the nursing program. I know that for us to have nursing programs at our schools is more expensive, and cost to the institution than other career tracks. So we need to take that into account as well. However, there's been a lot of infrastructure and partnership that's gone into this in terms of Hartford Healthcare working with Eastern that has been celebrated. And so an analysis of how this can be beneficial in the future would be in order.
Thanks, Don. Ted, before I just come to you, I think a couple of the presidents want to comment. I think if it's okay with you, Ted, I'd like to hear them out, and then we'll go to you. All right, well, we'll just start down the line. So, Dr. Toro?
Thank you, Regent Santiago. I have two comments. One, we have been informed that we cannot sign any of these agreements until they are approved by the board. That's a point I want to make, and I want clarification on that. Because if one institution is allowed to sign without the approval of the board, then all the institutions should be allowed to do the same. And going back to the competition, I think that this definitely motivates the institution to compete, and compete not on a level, at the same level with each other. I think that the board needs to really put parameters around these type of initiatives in such a way that we know what we can do or should do, and what we should not do. Because all of us are under a lot of pressure to increase enrollment. And we can discount our tuition, have the enrollment, but at the same time, increase the budget shortfall that we are going to face. So I will ask this committee and the full board to really make decisions around what I have stated. Thank you.
We're moving right down to Eastern. Well, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no,
I was
you.
going to go alphabetically.
Dr. Balducci, we'll go back to Eastern if they want to, but just a couple of context points. We had submitted early on my tenure 4 similar proposals that were not approved by the system office to move forward to the board, and in more recent times, the 3 that we have gotten approved were way too much work for what they're yielding. And so we will not be coming back to the board with more of these proposals. I understood it to be of interest to the board. Instead, what we are doing is we're building this into our financial aid model, which you'll approve, and they'll enable us to do things that are much more flexible. What we're finding are more effective. For example, I'm working with Northwell right now on a tuition match partnership, where if we put in a certain amount of dollars for a scholarship, they would match that. And then there's some incentive and mutual benefit from both of our institutions. And then I would just encourage us to think in a competitive landscape that we've got to be much more bolder than this. These aren't going to attract new students in any significant ways. The institutions that are doing cohort discount modeling, that are enrolling entire cohorts of businesses, those are the programs and models that are really attracting new enrollment. And so we want to explore some of that at Western, and we'll love to have conversations with this committee and others around some of those new models.
Thank you.
I think my colleagues have said most of what needs to be said. The thing that should get attention in the year ahead is the difference between us doing these kinds of agreements and having an unlimited ability to leverage institutional aid, which essentially is a proxy for discounting. So I think there should be some discussion about that in the year ahead so that we can agree on whether we're going to have the same rules of engagement to compete with one another.
Any further comments? Ed?
So thank you to all of the presidents. I think those were very meaningful comments, and I share Dr. Toro's concern of, once again, asking us to rubber stamp stuff, which I do not like doing. And so my understanding is I am concerned, and so we can have a separate note, understand why this contract was signed, and now we're asked to approve something that we have no choice in. But I deny that because we do have a choice. And so I plan to exercise my choice here. And again, I thank again Presidents Bernal, Toro, Balmer for your comments, because I am in sync with those, and I would tend to agree personally, and this is my personal opinion, that a mere discount does not really attract additional students here. Certainly, I agree. I'm not saying that the CFOs and the leadership at Eastern did not do a bigger agreement that didn't have just a discount, right? I understand that there's a lot more to this, but I do think that we should create better programs than mere discounting tuition match or whatever. We need to be doing things that are going to actually affect the curve here rather than really just saying, oh, well, for those people, we're going to give them a discount. Again, I don't mean to minimize the work done. I appreciate that it was done. I'm not fully aware of what work was done and would like to be. So again, I am not changing my point on this one, so I'm just going to stop right here. Pass it to whoever.
Thank you. Ari?
Yeah, look, all really good points, and I think we've got to look back, Mr. Chairman, and understand if in fact there was the instructions were not to sign any contracts ahead of approval, which to me makes sense, that we got to take appropriate action on that. I think, whether or not these are these types of discount programs yield any benefit is sort of the definition of a pilot. And I think we've discussed in the past the idea that, while we may find or not think that they work, we're trying to give institutions some flexibility so that they can experiment to see what works and encourage that entrepreneurial mindset. And so I think despite what I believe is likely a process failure and something we need to address, and I agree wholeheartedly with the idea that we need to be cooperating more than we need to be competing. And all the comments made were very well taken. I think it's the board, this committee, and maybe the full board or some portion of it needs to think about how we can facilitate in the very near future one of those cooperation conversations. My suggestion is that with all those considerations, we approve these to not create more of a problem with some partnerships that are very meaningful to the system writ large, and then address in very short order the larger issue. With that, I would, if I can, I'd move to approve.
Motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion on the issue? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Opposed.
Motion,
Yep, we got it.
You got
motion
that?
carries. I got the opposed, and there aren't enough, so the motion carries. Thank you. Further discussion? Okay, right now we're going to move on to the, I'm looking down here at the spending plan.
Yes.
No, just let me, moving, moving on now to the spending plan. I'll turn it over to Lloyd to begin that process.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to offer a couple of points before we walk through the numbers. First point is we've got about 50 minutes left in our scheduled meeting time. So what I will try to do is walk quickly through the numbers for each institution, as well as for the system as a whole and system office. And then we will, I will try to leave about a half hour for the regents to ask the institutional presidents and CFOs comments related to their proposed FY22 spending plans. So before I run through those numbers, I want to make sure you understand that we have been undertaking some improvements in the way we do our budgets and our financial reporting. Our focus has been to revise the package that we sent to the committee and to the board to provide clear separation on financial activity that mirrors a more traditional profit and loss statement of business, and to reserve predictions and sustainability, or to provide predictions of our reserves and sustainability considerations. You will see some changes in the format that you were provided in your packet in terms of the consolidated budget packet. You will also see staff reports associated with the FY27 budget. We still have some work to do, and as Chairman Santiago has said, this improvement effort is a work in progress. That work that we are continuing to do will improve in terms on the format so that we can make sure that our bottom-up approach to budget development, which starts at the campus levels, and those are reflected in the staff report, are consistent with the new top-down approach for budget reporting to the board, which is reflected in your consolidated budget plan package. So the point I'm raising here is only, you may see some very small differences in the numbers that are shown in the staff report, but the actual numbers that are being proposed here today, because those staff reports were driven on the sort of bottom-up approach. But what we are proposing here today is represented by the numbers in the consolidated budget plan package, which are the numerous tables that you see at the very end of your packet. So with that, I will present those numbers that are in that packet in summary form now. As a system overview, we are projecting a deficit of about $156 million across the system. We are proposing to spend $1.34 billion for all of our 6 institutions who serve a large number of learners, whether they are credit-bearing learners or whether they are non-credit-bearing learners. Our data shows that the sum of those learners exceeds 100,000 throughout the state. In terms of our revenues, we are expecting revenues to be about $1.18 billion. That is about 1.1% greater than the FY26 levels. The pie chart on the right shows what that proposed distribution is for FY27. Clearly, the vast majority of the resources, the revenues that we receive come from the students because the orange part of the pie, the tuition for $336 million, students pay, as well as the fees for mandatory fees, as well as housing and food service fees. So though our state generously provides a 39% subsidy across the system, these will differ by institutions. A higher subsidy for the community college, lower subsidy for the universities, and a lower subsidy still for Charter Oak. But the students across our system provide the majority of our revenues. Across the system, almost 60% of our revenues comes from students. In terms of the expenditures, we are proposing to spend, as I said earlier, 2 slides ago, $1.34 billion for all of our institutions. This represents a 3.2% increase from the FY26 level. Across the system, clearly, our highest expenditure line is personnel. It represents 72% of our budget. Other expenses represent about 18% of our budget, and institutional aid and waivers are about 8% of our total spending. Again, this may differ slightly across institutions, but this is a little more consistent in terms of those patterns across institutions relative to the revenues that I presented in the previous slide. So since personnel are our largest expense, let's take a look at those personnel expenditures. We expect to spend in FY27 just short of $1 billion in personnel, in particular $968 million, which is about 7.2% above FY26 levels. The full-time staff represents the largest share of our personnel. That's the dark green pie slice at the bottom of the pie. They represent about 30% of our personnel, excuse me. And our full-time faculty is the next largest group of personnel, representing about 24% of our personnel. That's shown in the lighter blue slide in the upper right-hand corner. And finally, the third largest item that we support or that we spend funds on is our fringe costs. Fringe costs represent a fifth of our budget. Though we went through, the state went through fringe reform for higher education here in Connecticut, fringe costs continue to increase. The share that we bear continue to increase, and they now represent 20% of our spending. In terms of other expenses, which is basically vendor costs. These are non-personnel costs, these are vendor costs. We expect to spend about $247 million in vendor costs across the system, and this, we see no change in these costs from FY26. Our largest categories are technology costs, which represents about 19% of our overall budgets. The second largest cost is facility operations at 18%. And this particular point emphasizes the need for additional bond dollars so that we can stop using operating dollars for facilities and use more bond dollars for facilities. By doing so, by getting those extra bond dollars for this particular expenditure line, it will free up flexibility in our operating budget to deal with the deficits that we have been showing. And finally, the third and the fourth largest categories of other expenses of vendor costs are food service contracts at 15% of our spending and utilities at about 14% of our spending. So let me walk quickly through each of the institutions' budgets. The FY26 estimate represent numbers that you saw in May when we went through the budgets in May. The FY27 budget numbers reflect the numbers that you will see in the consolidated budget plan. And you can see on the right-hand side of each of these tables, in green, they show increases in revenues, which is a good thing, and decreases in expenditures, which is a good thing. In red, we show decreases in revenues, which is not so good, and increases in spending, which sometimes are necessary, but they are coded in red. You will see that while Central had originally estimated $1.9 million back in a deficit back in FY26, which they will cover with their reserves, they are proposing a larger deficit of $13.1 million in FY27, which also is planned to be covered by their reserves. Eastern Connecticut State. Yes, sir.
I know we're trying to make it on time, and you know how much I appreciate that.
Sure.
But I wonder if, as we just go through each of the schools, if we could just pause and see if anybody from the school who's here or with us online has anything that they want to add or comment. So we just went through Central. Central, don't feel the need to, but if you have something that you'd like to share, we'd be happy to hear it.
The significant budget shortfall that we're projecting for fiscal year 27 is due to a number of factors. And don't take me wrong, I am going to be as direct as possible to try to put on the table the reasons behind that budget shortfall. The decision not to increase tuition for 2 consecutive years has made a significant impact as we move forward. And the impact of that decision will be affecting us for many years to come. That's one. The other factor here is the increase in the insurance, medical insurance, that has significant increase. And the last thing I am going to say, we did change the financial aid model to support in a better way the students who come to Central and have very high financial need. We did that also in anticipation of the impact of the big, beautiful bill that it's going to start affecting us in July 2026. Thank you.
Just a understanding on the tuition and the other things sounded like, well, at least the health insurance bit outside of our control. And then I heard you say increasing financial aid because it's our view that in order to get students in the door, they need more aid. Is that because we're talking about different students coming from different places, students have different needs? Just can you help land the plane there?
We usually serve students from Hartford, New Britain, Bristol, and West Hartford. That's where we get our students mainly from. The students from 3 out of these cities in recent years has shown more financial need than the students that used to come to Central before. So to attract and retain those students, we change the financial aid model. The net result of that change is that we have been able to get for next year more of those students, but at the same time, which is kind of interesting, the number of students who are paying full tuition has significantly increased as well.
But I mean, can you just try to understand, but our net tuition is down. Is that?
No, the net tuition is not down. Remember, we are not a private institution. So we don't use the same type of approach of tuition discount. What we do is institutional financial aid, that is a percentage of the revenue we get in tuition.
Got it.
And that's why it's important that to increase also the group of students who pay full tuition, because the 15% of more money is more money to help the students with financial needs.
Right.
Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, shall I move on?
Yep.
Let me say, as I move on to Eastern, that the net tuition, the second line on every one of these slides, it says net tuition and auxiliary revenue, in parens, net contra. The contra revenue includes mostly waivers and uncollectible tuition and fees. And so this is part of our new design of our report. And the net tuition includes some of those waivers that for students that are passed mostly by statutory mandate. So for Eastern Connecticut State University, they are proposing, or they are projecting to receive $122 million in revenue, which is a 4.6% increase. That's a good thing. They are proposing to spend $145.6 million, which represents a 17.5% increase. That increase is partly driven by some of the use of their operating dollars to support capital project needs, which is a concern I raised earlier. And they are projecting a $23.5 million deficit for the coming fiscal year. Eastern, did you want to offer a comment on your situation?
Yes, thank you, CFO Blanchard. As you had noted, this does include capital projects that traditionally would be funded by bond funds. That totals almost a little over 8 million. So that deficit, if capital projects are delayed, or if we do get additional bond funds, that would come down. There's also about 3 million that's not included in here that we received in FY26 that would carry. And that is chief of funds. I believe it's the interest income on students. So that would also have an impact. Again, that's timing. That being said, as President Toro mentioned, again, the not having a tuition increase has been a challenge and continues to be. Financial aid, it's bringing the students in, but it's retaining them. So when we look at students leaving, of course, we ask, what is the driver? That's a driver, if not one of the top drivers. So it's important that for a student to come in, that they can also withstand and stay. The other third component I'll mention are CBIs and state support. Eastern is receiving 1.6% or 1.7%, sorry, in an increase of state support. That's 600,000, while our collective bargaining increases, including the fringe change, is 4.2 million, which added 3.6 million to our structural deficit. That gap's going to continue every year based on current projections of CVIs and what we would be receiving in state. That just highlights the challenges at Eastern. I do hope at the end of the year that we'll be in better shape, specifically related to bond funds. And I will note right now, we are projecting some revenue growth in tuition. Our first year numbers are looking good. And most importantly, our business model is really housing. 90% of our first year students will be in housing. That's a big revenue driver.
You say the driver for students leaving is primarily tuition?
It seems to be changing by year. This year, we're hearing a lot about mental health. Again, this is anecdotal. But yes, we look every year at students what their balances are. And in some cases, their balances are too high, and we have to suggest that they don't stay at the university because they would just be adding debt. So yes, that's something that we look at every year at about this time as we're looking at students that haven't registered, and the number that have not registered for next semester. A lot of that is driven by balances due. Thank you.
Thank you, CFO Campbell. Next is the proposed FY27 budget for Southern Connecticut State University, who expects to receive $221 million in revenues, which is a 2% increase over their FY26 revenue base. And they are projecting and proposing to spend $249.6 million in expenditures, which represents a 4.8% increase. leading to a projected deficit of $28.5 million. I would ask Southern representatives if they would like to offer additional comment.
Thank you. Obviously, this is alarming for us and very concerning. We do not have adequate reserves to keep this structural deficit in place beyond this year. So our NETCHI accreditation requires us to have a minimum reserve that we will be in violation of at the end of this year. So it's something we're taking very seriously. The impact of the wage increases is about $12 million for us. It's a very significant part of what you're seeing in combination with the increase in fringe. And the decision to distribute the little bit of additional money that we got this year with our appropriation as part of the block grant really disadvantages us because we did not receive any of that in relation to our employee costs. So we really are at a pretty big deficit on covering the wage increases. We also are concerned about not being able to increase tuition over the last couple of years. That's impacted us as well. And I think that a really important thing, we similarly have concerns about the price and how that impacts our students. We would like to be offering more institutional aid to our highest need students, but we could not do so this year because of our budget position. We just don't have the reserves available to have leveraged that additional aid. So we are concerned about retention, and we are concerned about attrition in relation to financial pressures that our students might experience with some of the changes in the federal government spending. Thank you.
Thank you, President Bulmer.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think that appreciate you calling out the concern. It's a concern that this committee and the full board shares, not just for Southern, but across essentially all of our institutions. And certainly we can talk about that, as we get to kind of where we need to go from an approval perspective. But I think as we sort of talked about a little bit, when we talked about sort of the management confidential salary changes, that we have to do something different going forward. And we need to look at how we can do it together. It's going to need to be the combined wisdom of the leadership at system office, at the institutional levels. We're going to have to lean on, some of our shared governance folks to really come together and rethink about how we can go forward in a much more sustainable way. And so thank you for calling it out, and just wanted to let you know that we hear you and look forward to working with you to figure out a better and more sustainable path forward.
And the other comment alongside of what he's commenting on right now is the money only comes from two places. It comes from the state and it comes from the students. And unless somebody has another way of finding money, those are the only two places we get it. And I know tuition's an important issue to continue good, solid programs with good, solid staff and professors, but it's a problem, and how we resolve it is going to take a great deal of time, as Ari just said, and a good effort as to what we can do as we move forward. Yes. Oh,
Go ahead, Lloyd.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, President Bulmer and Southern. I'm sorry, there's a question by Regent Yang.
No, you guys go ahead. I'll wait till all of the institutions have presented.
Thank you, sir. All right, let's move on to Western Connecticut State University, who is projecting a $114 million revenues in FY27, which amounts to a 4.6% increase over the previous year. They are proposing to spend $126.3 million in FY27, which leads to a projected deficit of just short of $12 million. President Bernal, would you like to offer a comment on your budget?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Blanford. So, what stands out the most here are increases in personnel. And I just want to let you know that we are working to offset the expenses by really closely reviewing our overtime expenses over time. So we typically spend about $4 million a year in overtime for our maintenance and custodial and police staff, and are moved to a model that we're piloting this year where we will be hiring more staff in those areas, anticipating that the overtime costs will be reduced. And that also allows us to cancel a number of vendor contracts that we have. So the expense side of this, we anticipate at mid-year will be changing, reducing the overall deficit that you see here. And the other thing I would just say is that we did calculations based on what our budget would look like if certain factors had been in place for this fiscal year, including what my colleagues have talked about in tuition and fee increases. So, within the analysis that we've done, if our salary increases were fully funded by the state, if we had a 3% tuition increase, if we had a fully funded waiver program, and for WestCon, if we had a equal count of our out-of-state students, we would actually close this year with a positive $200,000. And so the strategy that we hope to be able to work with the system and board on is a multi-level lever strategy so that we can get to a stable structural position as a university. And I believe that would benefit the entire system. And that's going to take significant structural changes. Because our fund balance is going to be decreasing, we'll be coming back to the board with an updated action plan on how we plan to achieve the 30-day minimum. That is going to be a longer timeline than I had presented at the last meeting. With the plan that you'll see, we hope to be able to continue to add to our reserves by fiscal year 31, unless there are some more aggressive moves. What I would just also offer is that, the campus did hard work over this last year to decrease our expenses and increase our revenues of about $5 million. That included huge administrative restructuring. We're going to continue that work. We're setting a goal over the next 3 years to also generate $7 million more in revenue by new ventures that we're going to seed in innovation and ask our faculty and staff to test and pilot, and then we can see if we institutionalize them in many ways. But our focus this next year, in addition to stabilization, is retention and revenue generation and thinking outside of the box so that we can close this deficit without having to put so much on either our students or even having to go to the state with more than we really need.
Thank you. Any other comments, Weston? If not, we'll move right along. We have one left.
We have two left. The next is Connecticut State Community College, who is projecting for FY27 revenues of $419 million, which is expected, which is about a 3.1% increase over the previous year. CT State is proposing to spend $497 million for FY27, which will leave a $77.9 million deficit. To reiterate, all of our institutions, in addition to CT State, are proposing to pay for these deficits with their reserves. As you recall, Mr. Chairman, we were directed to use reserves to support our operations, and that is precisely what we have included in our proposals. That slide will come in a couple slides later. But I would invite President Royal to speak to CT State's budget. President?
Thank you. So I want to emphasize, as it's come up in with other institutions as well, that the decision to keep tuition flat when our expenses are repeatedly increasing over time creates an imbalance that even doing some cuts isn't going to reconcile. And so we really need to approach this differently. I do want to point out that in terms of our collective bargaining increases that were recently ratified for CT State, that is 5.35% as opposed to 4.5% for the majority of our unions. So we also bear higher costs there. And as you saw from the slide that Dr. Blanchard shared earlier, collectively that makes up a significant percentage of our workforce. Also, from an expense perspective, we have 11.2% increase in in fringe benefit rates, particularly related to medical costs, and a 9% increase in electricity rates. So these are things that are contributing to the cost of delivering our services. I also want to mention in my first year, I mean, two things that we've been focused on. One is we have intentionally held off filling some positions in order to help reduce the amount that we are tapping into our reserves to balance the budget. And the second is that we have launched our first strategic planning process for CT State Community College, and we anticipate being able to bring a draft of that plan to the board in the fall semester. We are going to present it to the faculty and staff upon their return in August. We'll get some additional feedback, and then we will be bringing draft form to committees for the board here to also look at. We recognize that we're going to need to think differently about this type of challenge, and I think we've got some creative ideas, but we are going to need the board to help us address some of the structural challenges that we have, and so we look forward to further conversations on that.
Thank you. Creative ideas are always interesting. You can't wait.
Okay, thank you. Yes, and finally, actually not finally in the slides because System Office will come next, but I'll be fast. Next is Charter Oak State College, who is expecting $27.2 million in revenue in FY27 and proposing to spend $28 million in expenditures for the same year. Their about $800,000 deficit is almost entirely driven by investments that they're making that were directed by the board. At this point, I'll ask CFO Moriarty to offer additional comment on Charter Oak's budget.
I will make this. Yes. All right. I'll make this brief. So our revenues are slightly short of our expenses this year. That is a result of our reserve drawdown to invest in AI, which is going to be used for enhancing our student services. Couple other takeaways from this slide would be that this year, as I had previously discussed, we are bolder with our enrollment targets. We had previously in years past set our enrollment targets at 9% and came closer to 15 to 20%. So this year we have upped our targets to 20% based on some leading indicators such as applications, things like that. And we intend to utilize those monies to refresh our academic material and continue to enhance our student support services. The 3-year outlook for us is net positive. So although you'll see a small reserve drawdown over the next planned 2 years, we do intend to be net positive, and those are strategic drawdowns instead of there being an indicator that we have a structural deficit. Last but not least, I just want to mention, I think my colleagues around the table have done an excellent job of talking about the factors both in and outside of our control that put pressures on our system. And I just want to mention, I've had the opportunity to work closer with this committee earlier in the year, and I appreciate the questions that come in from all the regents about setting context. And I think as we work for the next few months, the institutions, along with the system office and the regents, having dialogue around our tuition rates and what we need to do strategically as a system to start to shrink our deficits is very important. And it's not just within the context of how we operate as a system, but especially Charter Oak, we are looking at national context. There are a lot of different factors that influence our enrollment, and I'd imagine that be the case for all the institutions across the system. And that concludes my comments.
So the final slide, budget slide, and then I'll do one more slide to review our reserve usage, is the spending at System Office. System Office revenues come from our institutions entirely. We do not receive a block grant from the state. We are expected to receive $34.4 million in appropriations and $25.6 million from transfers to come up with $60 million in revenue to support $60 million in proposed spending for System Office Shared Services in FY27. To be clear, the $34.4 million in appropriations is what we sort of take off the top before we distribute the block grants. Those funds pay for personnel services at System Office and Shared Services. The System Office, rather. The Shared Services transfers of $25.6 million largely pays for other expenses. So that just shows you why we don't take it all off the top. It's just our process and how we distinguish the use of these various funds. But you'll see that we are projecting a balanced budget for System Office, mainly because we collect what we are projecting to spend. And so my final slide is reserves. And this table shows reserves that were, as of our FY25 financial statements, and then what we're projecting going forward. So if you'll walk with me through each column, at the end of FY25, we had somewhere north of $700 million in reserves. A large share of that, you could see where they are at the institutions, but certainly a large share of that was at System Office. Given the concerns about accumulated reserves, I've offered this first bullet on the screen here that suggests why we accumulated those reserves. ARPA dollars had to be spent. When we received ARPA dollars, which were the one-time funds that we had been receiving over the years, we needed to spend those dollars first. And it led to a situation where operating dollars that were left over went into our respective reserves, and that's measured by our financial statements or by our financial accounting auditors in our financial statements at the end of the year, at the end of each year. So in FY26, in FY26, we're projecting to spend about $149 million of those reserves to close our gaps. You can see how that applies to each institution, but you could also see that System Office is returning $79 million of its reserves, either in the form of debt relief or other purposes, some additional supports for various institutions and otherwise. So if we take that UNP number from the FY25 financial statements and subtract what we are planning to use in reserves for the current fiscal year, FY26, that gives us a projected UNP number for the end of FY26. That projected UNP number is $558 million. It's only projected because we don't know what the UNP number will be until after the financial statements have been completed. So it is merely a projection. And so if we start from that projection for the end of this fiscal year and add what we are planning for FY27, the budget for which we're seeking your approval here today, we are planning to use $165 million. You saw the reserve usage tied exactly to their deficits for each of our institutions, and then the $9.3 million in System Office is for various initiatives, to support various initiatives approved informally by the board. This board would approve those more formally. So after we apply the $160 million in reserves, we expect at the end of FY27, which won't be until the end of calendar year 27, we expect to find ourselves with $393 million in reserves, which represents less than 30% of total spending, which is at the bottom of best practice as given to us by as given to us by NACUBO. So, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my presentation of the FY27 spending plan. Your approval is a recommendation to the full board that will consider this spending plan next Thursday.
I think Regent Yang has something he wants to say, Chairman.
Ted, do you like to comment?
Yeah, thanks. So thank you everyone for putting this together. So I also thank you to Lloyd and his team and the members of this committee, because this year we did change things. I've been a broken record about this last 2 years saying that this process has hit us by surprise, and this year we had more input. It's obviously still a work in progress, but has improved. Unfortunately, our financial situation has not improved. In fact, it's quite the opposite. And the results that were summarized here by all of the colleagues from all the institutions, as well as system office, are beyond concerning. This is maybe a 4-alarm fire, only because I expect things to get worse before they get better. So I'll save the 5th alarm. But honestly, the reality, or more, I don't know the analogy, sorry. But the reality of this is that we need to do something different. So I know Chairman Balducci made comments, Ari made comments, I think Don made comments. So let me just add to those comments. We cannot follow this same budgeting process. We need to do something extraordinary now and begin that work together with each of our institutions on how we can address the programmatic costs, because no one is coming to our aid. I've been saying this for years and watching as the numbers change. And I appreciate that the presidents have raised the issue of tuition as being one of them. But honestly, that's only part of the problem. The bigger problems that we are facing are the costs that we're being asked to shoulder where we have meaningfully no voice, which affect our payroll costs, which are the vast majority of our costs. Additional costs that previously were burned by the state that then seem to be offloaded by us, which include some of those costs as part of the collective bargaining agreements, at least in out years. And at the same time, being told, no, don't raise tuition, which again, I personally support, just so we're clear, as well as, no, don't change anything. Well, obviously none of those things can work, and that's why we're in this deficit situation that we're in now that cannot continue. We need to do the work of this committee together with the presidents and the institutions to do the difficult work needed. And that is across all different dimensions. And so while I will approve this, and previously I didn't want to approve it for a different reason, this year I'll approve it and move it forward. But understand that this is in absolutely no way, and no one is saying this, but this is in absolutely no way a sustainable budget. It is beyond a crisis situation that we now need to address in a different fashion. And this is not necessarily just time for clever ideas. This is the time also for blocking and tackling. And that includes reductions to costs. That includes changes to programs if necessary. That includes maybe larger out-of-the-box ideas that we previously have not been able to stomach, because we must do this because all of our institutions, every single one, is in the same situation. And that situation is not just in this state, it is in this country, perhaps even this world, that higher education is facing unbelievable challenges, and we will not all survive if we do not make those considerations. So thank you to System Office, this committee, and the presidents for putting this work ahead, but really the hard work is later.
Thank you, Ted. Final comment?
Yes. Thank you, Regent Yang, for those comments. I thought they were precisely accurate. I want to reiterate, however, and this was shared by the presidents with the committee and the chairman, we have two sources of revenues, the students and the state. If we are not willing to raise tuition and fees on the students, we will have greater structural imbalances if the state continues to fund us at the level they are funding us. So our structural imbalances are borne by three major factors. The fact that tuition is not keeping up with our increased costs, the fact that CBIs, to the extent that collective bargaining increases are imposed on our institutions, the support we get for those increases are not enough. They're not nearly enough. And we would have to raise tuition by the amount of the shortfall in state support in order to return to structural imbalance. And that's not even considering the accumulated nature of these shortfalls. If we increase CBIs and we don't increase tuition, those impacts accumulate across time. And that means it will impact the structural imbalance in a negative way across time. This is conversations I think the Finance Committee, together with the institutional leaders, ought to have, because it's the only way we're going to get at addressing these fiscal imbalances. The final point I want to make is also about waivers and other unfunded mandates. To the extent that we receive mandated costs like waivers, we are compelled to use internal resources that we would spend on other things like student supports to pay for those waivers. So these are all contributors, major contributors to our structural imbalances. It will require conversations between the board and the institutions, as well as between the larger system and the state. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you.
before we move on.
Before we move on to the spending plan.
This was the spend, yeah, just one, we had said at the last meeting, we had asked that, Lloyd, that you came back with working group schedule, start working through some of these items. I don't see that on the agenda. Where we stand and looking at these spending plans only drives home even more the point that those need to start and they need to start right away. So, I think, I'll be prepared to put this spending plan forward to the full board for approval next week. However, I would ask that when we review it with the board next week, that by that time, we have an idea of what those meetings will be and at least the first couple scheduled, so that we can start the process. We cannot start looking at this soon enough. So I would, that's my main comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, and I'm sorry, Charlene.
So obviously higher education has continued to have crosswinds that none of us have experienced over long careers. And so I think the question I have is, does the system need any tools in their toolbox that we don't have, whether it's training or consulting? And, I point to UConn and UConn Health, who have leveraged some unique ideas from consultants that they've found fruitful in trying to navigate all of the different things that are going on, some of which is very much in your control and some isn't. But it doesn't seem like the headwinds are going to change. And so, again, I'm just throwing that out as if we're going to do something different, the question of whether or not we have the tools for the journey is worth thinking about. Thank
I
you.
appreciate that, Regent Casamento, and certainly we can do better on improving and being creative. The partnership agreements was just one example of that. However, the biggest difference between our system and UConn Health is that UConn and UConn Health have 25% of their revenues or so comes from grants and research grants. And so we are not in that ballpark. We are not even close to that ballpark. So that's why I emphasize we get money only from the state and the students. We don't have the mission to sort of obtain external funding to that level.
So my point was not to compare, just to be clear, CSU's levers with UConn or UConn Health's, but my point is a big part of their conversations is what kind of, assistance do they need to figure out opportunities to bring into alignment revenue and expense. So again, just like I wouldn't compare CT State to the universities, these are all very different institutions with different problems. But nevertheless, I do think it's worth thinking about whether or not the system needs to develop muscles in that area to weather the storm. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments before we move this forward? Before I move the spending plan forward, I would just indicate that we move it forward so we can take action on it next week at the full board meeting. However, it can be amended by members at the board meeting if necessary. So with that, I would make a motion that we move the spending plan, adopt the spending plan. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and second. Discussion, further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Motion's carried. Spending plans move forward. Thank you very much. With that, I would now make a.
Can I move to adjourn?
That's exactly what we're looking for. Thank you. Motion to
Second.
adjourn. Is there a second? Motion
Seconded.
made, seconded. Thank you very much. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all for your time and effort and input.
Thank you.
Thank you.